Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Amy Waywell. I am the Director of Membership here at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's lecture featuring the exhibition Rachel Ruysch, Artist, Naturalist, and Pioneer, which is on view here at the MFA until December 7th. As always, we appreciate your ongoing member support and your participation in our virtual lecture series. As a reminder, this program is coming to you virtually from the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. Founded in 1870, the MFA stands on a site that has long served as a place of meeting and exchange among different Algonquin nations, including the Massachusetts. As a museum, we acknowledge the long histories of the land we occupy today and seek ways to make Indigenous narratives more prominent in our galleries and our programming. Before I introduce our speaker, I want to point out some useful functionality that Zoom offers that could enhance your experience tonight. First, there is a transcript and closed captions available during the presentation. And to enable that functionality, you simply click on the button that says Show Captions on the bottom of the Zoom screen. And secondly, we encourage you to ask questions during and after the presentation. And to do so, we're going to ask you to use the Q&A function also at the bottom of the Zoom screen. We always leave some time at the end of the presentation to take as many questions as we can, and I will be happy to moderate that. Now it's my pleasure, and I'm happy to introduce tonight's speaker. Antien Knaap, the Rosemarie and Eijk van Otterloo Curator, Art of Europe at the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, received her PhD from the Institute of Fine Arts at New York University. She is a native of the Netherlands and a specialist in Dutch and Flemish art. At the MFA, she was part of the curatorial team responsible for the reinstallation of the Dutch and Flemish galleries that opened in 2021. Her exhibitions include Dutch Art in a Global Age, masterpieces from the Museum of Fine Arts Boston, which traveled to the North Carolina Museum of Art, the High Museum of Art, and the Kimball Art Museum, as well as Rachel Ruysch, Artist, Naturalist, and Pioneer, which was co-organized with the Toledo Museum of Art and the Alte Pinakothek in Munich. Antien, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know everybody is very enthusiastic and looking forward to hearing about this really fascinating exhibition that you've curated.
Great. Yes. Welcome, everybody. And thank you for being here tonight to celebrate the exhibition Rachel Ruysch, Artist, Naturalist, and Pioneer. So, here's my title. Rachel Ruysch was amongst the most renowned and successful still life painters in the late 17th and early 18th century Europe. Her works were collected by European royalty, and she received the high honor of serving as court painter to the German ruler Johann Wilhelm. She had a productive 7-decade-long career, and a year before her death, in 1750, 11 writers wrote poems in her honor, praising her as the Flora of Amsterdam. Now, despite the fame during her lifetime, Ruysch remained largely overlooked until recently, although she was never entirely forgotten. The last catalog of her work appeared 70 years ago, and there are no articles on her work. We are proud to present the first ever solo exhibition dedicated to Rachel Ruysch, organized, as Amy said, in partnership at the Alte Pinakothek in Munich, shown here on your left, and the Toledo Museum of Art in the center. Now, instead of presenting her as part of an all-female survey, we give her the traditional monographic treatment typically reserved for male artists like Pauls and Vermeer. In what follows, I will take you on a journey through the preparation process of the exhibition and the exhibition itself. Although Ruysch was part of a still life tradition dating back to the early 1600s, she was able to develop a distinctive approach. Key among her innovations was that she expanded the range of flowers she depicted and perfected the technical brilliance of her work. She had a keen eye for unusual flowers from across the globe, highlighting their smells, growing patterns, and behaviors. And more than her contemporaries, she added a host of crawling and fluttering insects to her creations. Ruysch merged a scientific approach with a manner of storytelling that highlighted the wonders of nature and the darker forces hidden within. Now, I'm pleased to acknowledge here my co-curators, Robert Schindler, curator at Toledo, who initiated this project, and Bernd Ebert, formerly curator in Munich and now director of the Dresden Museums, who joined the project for a fruitful collaboration between our three institutions. At the MFA, I would like to thank Pierre Turgenian, and Grant Director, Frederick Dolchman, Chair of Art of Europe, Chris Atkins, Director of the Center for Netherlandish Art, and Angie Morrow, Senior Director of Exhibitions, for their unwavering support of this project. And I'd like to thank so many people across the museum who worked on this exhibition, too many to mention here. Now, a workshop organized by the Center for Netherlandish Art here at the MFA offered us the opportunity to discuss her work with specialists, including our Director of Conservation, Rona Beth, CNA Director Chris Atkins, and the curators early in the stage of the project in 2023. The CNA, as many of you know, is dedicated to advancing the appreciation and research of Dutch and Flemish art, and they have been invaluable in helping the project and the many programs related to it come to fruition. Now, because there is no catalog raisonné on Ruysch's work, or basically an overarching study of or catalog of her entire oeuvre, we had to do a lot of pioneering work in locating paintings and assembling her body of work. To this end, we traveled to numerous museums and private collections in Europe and the US. One particularly memorable visit was to the Fazanerie Castle in Eigensel, Germany. To properly view the paintings, we even had to climb up a ladder, as you see here in the photograph. Since the heating was turned off because it was winter, we kept our coats on the entire time. It's really a stunning castle, also known for its impressive porcelain collection. So I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely thank the over 40 generous lenders who made the exhibition possible. Beyond the research, the content team here at the MFA spent over a year preparing the design, interpretation, and videos for the exhibition, shown here on your screen in the design department. Our aim was to create drama, variety, and wonder. And to this end, we chose deep wall colors and displayed Ruysch's works alongside specimens, drawings, books, and interpretive materials. And I would really like to thank the team for their incredible work, as well as the conservators. And the slide on the right shows a mock-up of some wall colors that we tried out in the galleries with the reproductions of the paintings. A big part of our exhibition preparation was also working with biologists to highlight the stories that flowers and insects can tell. We had the great privilege to collaborate with Professor Charles Davis from Harvard University. And there's a personal connection here because our sons are very good friends dating back to elementary school. So early on in 2017, when I couldn't identify a flower, I would call Professor Davis. And then when this exhibition came up, he joined our team from the beginning and helped with the identification of the specimens and the entire scientific content of the show. You will also see some of the tried vivarium specimens in the exhibition. Apart from interdisciplinary collaboration, we also did basic archival research examining documents about her life, such as this document of her betrothal, which shows that she was married to another artist, shown at the top, Julian Pol, at the age of 28 in the year 1693. In the middle, you see Rachel Ruysch, and then below that, Frederik Ruysch, professor des Anatomia, or der Anatomia, all here, referencing her father, Professor Frederik Ruysch, who was a witness. Indeed, Ruysch grew up in an intellectual household. Her father was a famous anatomist and botanist in Amsterdam who turned their house into a natural history museum. His rather weird collection consisted of anatomical oddities and thousands of insects and amphibians. He turned some of these elements into macabre tableaus, complete with a landscape made of kidney stones and infant skeletons weeping into handkerchiefs. This darker aesthetic left a lasting mark on Rachel, and you see here a print of one of his arrangements. Now, in the exhibition, we organized the space into 6 sections that follow a roughly chronological progression, complemented by thematic highlights. And here are the titles. The first section, entitled Growing Up in Nature's Cabinet, evokes her father's curiosity cabinet. We juxtaposed outstanding works from across her career with specimens from Harvard's natural history collections, including around 300 butterflies, moths, and beetles, as well as a microscope. The total species, butterfly species, was 20, and 5 lizards and snakes, which all appear in her paintings. A key work in this section is an early portrait of Ruysch, which you see on the left side of the back, one of 3 likenesses of her in the exhibition. The work is in a collaboration. The portrait painter Michiel van Musser, 20 years her senior, painted Ruysch at age 28 in her studio, surrounded by the paraphernalia of her craft, including pots with blue paint and a palette with many colors on it. Ruysch herself added the flowers on the table, an advertisement for the abundant flower bouquets that are rich with movement and light. The open book on the ledge includes a drawing that Catherine Powell Warren has identified as a work of a morning glory by Herman Henstenberg, a botanical artist who documented birds and insects in the holdings of collector and botanist Thomas Look. The portrait, therefore, highlights Ruysch's role as a successful painter, notice her silk garment and Japanse rock, and also emphasizes her artistic process that involved not only studying nature itself, but also using drawings by other artists for inspiration. But ultimately, it also places her in a network of other artists, not just Musser, but also botanical artists in the orbit of Asmus Rock. Now, the impact of Frederik's collection is especially visible in Ruysch's striking use of a diverse array of insects and amphibians. According to Katharina Schmidt-Loske, Ruysch of the Leibniz Institute in Bonn, who contributed to the catalog, Ruysch painted up to 40 species of butterflies and moths, far more than most of her contemporaries, who rarely depicted more than 10. Here are details of remarkable insects from across her career. So if you go from the upper left to the lower right, you see that early on, she painted mostly European species, like the admiral butterfly, which you see in the upper left and then in the center. But later on, she started to incorporate the rare non-native ones, most strikingly the blue morpho butterflies in the upper right. Collectors in the 17th century, like Frederik Ruysch, especially admired butterflies for their vibrant colors, their intricate patterns, and ultimately their distant origins. Now, by juxtaposing Ruysch's paintings with 8 boxes of insects in the first room, and I'm just gonna quickly say that you see here the cabbage white also in the center, and then the tiger moth, another admiral, and this is a swallowtail. So by juxtaposing her works with boxes of insects, visitors are immediately encouraged to look beyond the flowers and fruits and search for the beetles, butterflies, moths, flies, and bees that perch on petals, hide in shadows, and consume blossoms from within. Now, to make the connection between Ruysch's art and the specimens as clearly as possible, we curated the boxes specifically for the exhibition. Most people think we just sort of went to the Natural History Museum and pulled out a drawer, but it's actually carefully curated specifically for this purpose. So to put together a total of 9 boxes, there's one in the third room, is easier than it looks. So let me just take a couple of minutes to show you the behind the scenes for this process. It all began with Katrina Schmidt-Loske, who performed the invaluable work in identifying the insects and amphibians in Ruysch's work. She studied over 80 paintings. Here is one of her many, many PowerPoint slides with identification that she shared with us. And, you know, we learn a lot here. She says, females see black dots. So that's the white cabbage or Pilus brassicae. We then approached the curators at the Museum of Comparative Zoology at Harvard University to see which ones they had in their collection and which ones we could borrow. I'm extremely grateful to Dr. Christel Meyer, collections manager, for helping us with the selection of the specimens and most importantly, preparing the 9 boxes with specimens. Like I said, 300 in all. And here you see is on the left with the designer Sana Rayo. So now Dr. Meyer also compiled a spreadsheet sheet outlining the full range of possibilities. What you see here represents just a quarter of this entire document, which at times is overwhelming. So we also relied on the Museum of Comparative Zoology database, which shows the sheer number of species they have in their collection. And this is, again, the cabbage white. Now, based on this research, I created mock-ups for the display boxes that we wanted in the galleries. And here you see the cabbage white with the swallowtail, which nicely complement each other visually, but also had a direct connection to Ruysch's paintings. In some cases, such as the blue morpho butterfly, there weren't enough specimens to fill a box, so we supplemented it with other ones, keeping in mind that they had to belong to Ruysch's repertoire. Another part of the process was filling the boxes, which in collaboration with our head of object conservation, Abby Heiken, and the designer Sana Rao, here at the MFA were special ordered and picked the color and the deck color. And we see here Dr. Meyer pinning them one by one in the boxes and also barcoding them one by one so that they could be cataloged. Not all of them were cataloged. We had discussions about the number of species per box, making sure that was not too sparse and not too crowded either. The result is a gallery that immerses visitors in a world of scientific discovery and artistic mastery. The next section is called Lessons in Still Life, Rachel and Anna. It brings together Rachel's early work and that of her little-known sister, Anna. While Rachel worked for over 7 decades, Anna likely ceased painting after she married, with only 12 works attributed to her. And we have 4 in the show, 3 of which are signed. Now, coming from a well-to-do family, Ruysch had the opportunity to train with the best flower painter in Amsterdam, Willem van Aalst. Ruysch entered his studio at the age of 16 or 17, in the late 1670s, and worked with him until his death in 1683. The painting on your screen on the far left is a typical example of Van Aalst's work, and it's in the exhibition. An asymmetrically arranged bouquet in a delicate vase sits on a marble ledge set against a dark background. Flowers are shown from different angles, and roses, one of his stock flowers, are shown in different stages of bloom, from tightly closed bud to full bloom. Ruysch's floral compositions of the 1680s reveal the influence of her teacher. And I'm showing you here in the center a work from 1686. Like Van Aalst, she arranged gilt flowers loosely in a glass vase set against a dark background. And you notice that there's quite a bit of dark around the bouquet. She also incorporated a purple velvet tablecloth, one of Van Aalst's trademark motifs, that hangs over the marble tabletop. But there are also some differences. Van Aalst included traditional symbols of transience and death, like the mouse over on the left on the marble ledge, and a pocket watch with a blue ribbon, which are common motifs in 17th century Dutch still life painting. Ruysch took a more scientific approach. She never once depicted a watch or a skull or any Vanitas symbol, opting instead to depict a wider variety of eye-catching insects and plants instead. Notice, for example, the prominently displayed small emperor moth on the ledge, the red and white frayed poppy, and the striped canary grasses that lend the bouquet some airiness and dynamism. So with these changes, Ruysch distinguished herself, or started to distinguish herself from her teacher, and would likely tap into new audiences. And remember, Ruysch was working on an open market, so her paintings needed to stand out from the competition. Now, Rachel's younger sister, Anna, 2 years younger, on the right, also painted flower arrangements, but less is known about her. In fact, unlike Rachel, her work was almost entirely forgotten. The 2 sisters worked closely together, and like Rachel, Anna may have studied with Van Aalst. Anna copied works by Rachel and painted close variants, possibly to provide additional stock for her sister's workshop. The delicate bouquet on the far right, public's favorite, echoes several elements from Rachel's painting in the center. A purple velvet draped over the table, a glass vase, and a similar array of flowers featuring blue bindweed and a white rose, with ants crawling over. Yet subtle stylistic differences reveal Anna's distinct hand. While Rachel rendered the blue bindweed with layered, twisting, threefold blossoms, Anna closely chose to depict 2 blooms, positioned one above the other. I don't know if you can see this blue, so in the middle here. So the stories of Rachel and Anna Ruysch highlight the different career paths of women artists in the 17th century. While Rachel achieved considerable fame and success in a world of men, Anna's career was cut short. The 4 works by Anna on display in the exhibition offer an opportunity to appreciate the talent of this lesser-known but accomplished artist. The next section, called Morbid Nature, is dedicated to forest wall paintings, a category of still life painting depicting a dark, natural underworld populated by hissing snakes and fluttering butterflies. So here we aimed to evoke the dark and gloomy mood of the forest floor paintings with dark eggplant wall colors offset by a lighter color for the central niche. Here in the center of the slides. Now, Ruysch made the genre her own, adding bursts of vibrant colors and rare creatures from her father's curiosity cabinet. And on the far left, you see an example of Otto Marseus van Schriek, also a Dutch painter contemporary of Wim van Aalst, who invented the genre. You see a little less color there. So here are 2 examples from the 1680s, both featuring the variegated leaves of thistles combined with the mossy forest floor, slithering lizards, vivid blossoms, and knolls gnarled tree trunks. She set herself apart again from her peers by incorporating exotic, awe-inspiring species. And it's a little hard to see, so I have a blue circle around it. This is the horned Pericles beetle from South America crawling on a tree trunk. These remarkably large insects, 3 of which are included in the exhibition, were prized objects in natural history collections. Botanical illustrators, such as Herman Henstenberg, remember him, he did the Blue Morning Glory in the portrait, also happened to incorporate them in exquisite watercolors of vellum, such as the one here on the right on the exhibition. So as Ruysch is painting these forest floors, there's also illustrators who are depicting the same species. And then here below is a little specimen. So let's take a moment to consider her biography. In 1693, at the age of 29, Ruysch married the portrait painter William Pol, with whom she would have 10 children. They lived on the Wolvenstraat in the center of Amsterdam. Pol was an accomplished portrait painter, but it was clearly Ruysch who was the greater talent. He appears to be a supportive husband who may have acted as her agent. Rachel kept her maiden name, Ruysch, and proudly signed many of her paintings in beautiful typographic print. Section 4, entitled Flowers of Empire, focuses on Ruysch's most diverse flower bouquets from the 1690s and later. So now she's moved out of the father's home and she's living in Julia. Now, Ruysch benefited from the influx of large numbers of non-native flowers that entered Dutch botanical gardens in the late 17th century as the result of colonial expansion. The Netherlands experienced a green revolution, with horticulturalists competing to cultivate in greenhouses tropical species from pineapples and eggplants to cacti and passion flowers. This map, which is in the catalog, shows the most important public and private gardens across the Netherlands, which included the Leiden Botanical Garden, as you all know, the oldest one, founded in 1590, but also the Garden of Women collectors like Agnes Blok and Magdalena Poel, who had country estates along the river Vecht, which you see right at the, well, I guess it was there. And Ruysch was at the center of it all, incorporating these botanical novelties into her art. Of crucial importance to her was the Hortus Botanicus, which had moved to a larger, new and larger location in Amsterdam in 1682. So Amsterdam was not as old as Leiden, but really rose to prominence in the 1680s. The Amsterdam garden soon developed into the richest collection of native and exotic plants in Europe. While her father, Frederick Ruysch, was teaching at the Hortus, the garden was overseen and managed by Jan Kammelen, an apothecary and botanist, and Jan Huydekoper, who was also an officer of the Dutch East India Company, or POC. And often the role of Frederick is overstated, saying that he was the director, but he was just an adjunct professor. So in his capacity, Huydekoper was able to obtain many seeds, bulbs, shrubs, and living plants from Dutch trading posts across the globe. And they transported these in chests on these VOC ships, and those chests still exist. In 1686, the Hortus opened its hothouse that was dedicated to cultivating tropical plants in a cold Dutch climate. And thanks to new technologies such as heated floors, they were able to grow these species. Now, imagine this environment as a source of inspiration for Ruysch, who, as a woman, was excluded from universities but admitted to the city's garden. So let's see how this exposure to these global species changes her art. The painting in Bonn here on your right that was cleaned for the exhibition dates to the late 1690s, testifies to Ruysch's interest in non-native species. Instead of European flowers, buyers would have been accustomed to, the rose, the carnation, the poppy, she incorporated a white devil's trumpet from Mexico, in the center, a passion flower from Brazil, and the red trumpet vine over on the upper right from North America. Perhaps the most unusual one in this bouquet is the carrion flower on the lower left, a sort of star-shaped, from South Africa, which was known for its fall odor. It would have been contrasted with the sweet perfume of the pink and white oleander shown on the right. Now, she could have studied these flowers in Dutch gardens, but Huide Koper and Gammelen, just like Agnes Blok, also commissioned various botanical artists to document the flowers in their collection. And it's these exquisite watercolors that also serve as a source of inspiration for Ruysch, and many of which are in the exhibition. Notice here on the left, a Devil's Trumpet by Johanna Herold, one of the many women active in this period as botanical illustrator. She's the daughter of Maria Sibylla Merian. In addition to rare and unfamiliar flora, she also depicted, on the ledge, the famous morpho butterfly from Brazil, which she juxtaposes with a European swallowtail, almost in an attempt to make sense of these new species. And she also juxtaposes the white devil's trumpet from Mexico with the white lily. So she seems to be making sense of, these new imports and how they relate to the European versions. Now, the very same combination of flowers seen in the barn painting reappear in Ruysch's still life and exotic flowers from the mid-1790s. Here, the number of species reaches 36, and if you look very carefully, you could see a pineapple in the center behind the white devil's trumpet, which have all been identified by Charles Davis. The map produced by Davis's lab highlight in one glance the origins of Ruysch's flowers across 5 continents. As this map coincides with Dutch commercial and colonial networks, it highlights that each specimen is rooted in histories of colonialism, power, and environmental disruption. Now, Ruysch's arrangements invite us to reflect on their deeper meaning. Among the Sumtree's bouquet, viewers will find the toxic devil's trumpet, the pungent carrion flower that attracted flies, and the prickly cactus. It's sort of calling, it's number D, it's calling for this. Was Ruysch marveling at the wonders of a rapidly changing world, celebrating Dutch global reach, or hinting at the vanity of colonial ambition? Section 5 is dedicated to achieving international fame. In the 1700s and 1710s, were a highly successful period for Ruysch. In 1701, at the age of 37, she became the first woman to be admitted to the Painting Society Confrérie Cultura in The Hague with her husband, Miriam Cole. She submitted a painting, he did not, and she was able to practice painting in The Hague. So this was an incredible honor. Her career reached its high point in 1708 when she was appointed court painter to Johann Wilhelm, a powerful ruler in Germany, Düsseldorf, and his wife, Anna Maria Luisa de Medici. Now, this appointment was extraordinary for any artist at the time, and even more exceptional for a woman. Now, during these years, Ruysch's work grew increasingly ambitious and complex. Her paintings expanded in skill, intensified in color, and became more abundant. The section called Achieving International Fame brings together a group of 8 still lifes, almost all painted for Johann Wilhelm or his family members, the Medici, and a portrait of her and her family dating to 1716, the last year of her tenure. That's the year that Johann Wilhelm dies. You will see that we have chosen here for a rich red color and added molding on the wall to evoke the environment of the court. Now, like the earlier portraits, this depiction of the Ruysch whole family is a collaboration. Ruysch painted the elaborate flower arrangement on the table while her husband, standing behind her, portraitist Miriam Pohl, added the figures. At the center, the couple's son, the youngest of their 10 children, presents Ruysch with a medallion with a depiction of Johann Willem, a gift to Ruysch. Pohl gestures proudly toward the finished portrait, finished painting, which is hard to see in this picture, in the background, underscoring his role in promoting Ruysch's art. And he was likely her agent, as I mentioned. Shown in the contemplative pose and in an exquisite silk, Ruysch appears not as a craftsperson, but as an intellectual artist at the height of her success. How did she get this position? Of course, her talent, but Frederick Ruysch, who was acquainted with Johann Willem, played a pivotal role in securing Ruysch's position. As shown in this letter addressed to Johann Willem, this was published by Susan Tipton. And you see here, he says, also that your highness had the goodness and patience to witness what diligence my sweet daughter displays in making a flower piece, and all of that done after life without copying from others, which she will present to your highness. So here he's introducing her and her work. Now the painting, and it's signed July 1708. The painting he references in the letter is the one on your screen, which is dated 1708. Indeed, this really was her trial piece. To impress her new patron, she composed a sumptuous arrangement brimming with local and imported species. So you see that she, if this works for Johann Willem, she goes back to some of the more familiar flowers, but also adds unusual ones. A luscious orange, the only one she, well, not the only one she ever painted, but she didn't paint it very often. A Mediterranean fruit cultivated in Dutch hothouses provides a dazzling accent in composition. Higher up, nestled beneath the striped tulip, she placed an 8-spot diadem butterfly from Indonesia, a large, exceptionally rare specimen that immediately draws the eye and complements the striking pattern of the nearby tulip. We have it in the next picture. In this shadowy recess of the red flower near the glass vase on the lower right, the second blue circle, she concealed a brilliantly colored Obrina olive ring from Brazil, which you see here in the center in the box. And it's almost like a hidden secret waiting to be discovered by the viewer. Now, beyond her inclusion of exotic and rare insects, Ruysch employed a range of artistic devices. A fly resting on an orange, the reflection of a window with rectangular panes revealing a sky and a gabled house, and the mirrored images of the orange and a praying mantis in the glass vase. Together, this display of virtuosity and abundance, like a skater performing all their different tricks in their repertoire, helped secure her position as courtman. The following year, she painted a fruit still life as its pendant. In that same year, she painted another flower still life, which is in the MFA's collection, A Promised Gift of Rosenberg and Eijk from Otterloo. The painting, which was originally in the collection of Otterloo, could take, was deep sessioned in 1937 and came to the MFA in 2017. The still life highlights the qualities that made Ruysch's work so desirable in elegant composition, vivid color, and striking realism. She arranged the bouquet along an S curve, connecting the striped tulip at the top with the orange marigold that bends below the tabletop. But beneath this lush beauty lies something darker. In the center of the arrangement appears a cut stem with its rings visible on the right, separated from its bloom. Nearby, a marigold droops, its stem visibly broken. A single tulip leaf bears a tear in its vibrant green surface. These dramatic cuts and wounds hint at decay and death even, as an inseparable part of nature's eternal cycle. Now, the highlight of this section is a larger horizontal painting from 1714, which hung in Johann Wilhelm's bedroom. And I'll quickly show you a detail here of the iguana, the striped iguana chasing this beautiful egg-fly butterfly. And here she really pulls out all the stops and combines a flower painting with a good still life. If you look closely underneath the iguana is a wilting sunflower in the shadow, further highlighting the delicate balance between beauty and decay that underlies many of her paintings. And I'm pleased to say that this painting from Augsburg was appealing for the exhibition. In the last section, called An Art Heroine, we focus on Ruysch's late career. After Johann Wilhelm's death in 1716, Ruysch's artistic output gradually declined. However, she resumed working in the late 1730s and 40s when she was in her late 70s and early 80s. She began using a smaller format, possibly to satisfy the demand for intimate, domestically skilled paintings, or to adapt to the limitations of aging eyesight and a less steady hand. Her late works also show a shift in style, softer colors, and a lighter backgrounds, reflecting the changing taste of the period. Now, you might wonder, why is it called an art heroine? Well, this has to do with her biographer, Johann van Gogh, because even at this late stage, Ruysch's brilliance was widely recognized. Johann van Gogh praised her as an art heroine and Holland's artistic marvel. And here he says, an art heroine who shines as the largest orb in the heaven of art, and occupies the central pearl in Holland's crown. Now, about 6 months before Ruysch's death, Art Schouwman created a poignant final portrait of her that was meant to go in Van Gogh's biography. At 85 years old, an extraordinary age at this era, she remained a respected figure. Schouwman depicted her with a blend of honesty and admiration, capturing the lines of her aged face. In the foreground, a palette, fruit, and the medal awarded to her by her patron stand as symbols of her celebrated legacy. And we notice that Van Gogh calls her Pole, even though she would always use the name Ruysch. So in this section, we're also proud to present a recent acquisition to the MFA's collection. It's inscribed in the top left corner with Ayatis 79, referencing her age. So she had begun to include her age in her signature just a year earlier, a gesture that reflects both her awareness of her advancing years and a quiet pride in her enduring artistic legacy. So as I said, by this time, she shifted to smaller formats and a lighter palette. This composition centers on 3 flowers, white, pink, and red roses, and poppy anemones. Many of the blues are executed in Prussian blue, a recently introduced and more affordable pigment than traditional expensive blues that was on the reed. So Ruysch was actually among the very first Dutch artists to use this new pigment for art, incorporating it as early as 1715, and it was invented in 1706. And here you can see Rachel Ruysch, 1742 1879. Now, Ruysch often portrayed death as an inevitable part of nature's cycle, and nowhere is this theme more explicit than in her final known painting, signed at her age 83, in the lower right corner. It is her smallest work, measuring 6 by 6 inches. Unlike the lush, vibrant bouquets she created for Johann Wilhelm, these flowers don't appear in a vase, but are cut, severed from life. Blossoms droop and tilt sideways. A red peony lies face down. The tulip, usually open and curling outward, is tightly closed. Even the warm tones of the ledge are replaced by cold, dark gray stone. As Don Skorshevsky from Brandeis University has argued, Ruysch at age 83 painted her own eulogy, brilliant in color, but quietly announcing her own death. She died less than 2 years after completing this painting. So to conclude, despite the significant barriers faced by early modern women, including exclusion from formal education, limited access to guilds, and the expectation to manage the household, Ruysch found a way to thrive as a highly successful artist. Independent, learned, and well-connected, she participated in botanical networks, gained access to foreign courts, and was accepted into a prestigious painters guild. But what truly set Ruysch apart was not just her social achievements. It was the quiet power, intricate beauty, and striking biodiversity of her work that enabled her to surpass even the greatest still life painters of her time, regardless of gender. So before I pass it over to Amy, I just want to put in a quick announcements for some future events. In fact, next week, this is the catalog that the MFA published a year ago with fascinating articles. And this is an upcoming event, Thursday, October 30th, sorry. The Handel and Haydn Society will have a concert in honor of Rachel Ruysch starting at 5:30, and we have a public program with Charles Davis, biology professor, myself, and Claudia Swan, Mark Well, professor of art history at Washington University, moderated by Chris Atkins from the CNA. And we all welcome you and hope that you attend. And then finally, I should say for all of you who visit the exhibition, we encourage you to use the QR code at the end of the show with a visitor survey, as we'd love to hear your feedback. And then here are the credits of the exhibition. And with that, I'll turn it over to Amy.
Thank you so much, Antien. That was a fascinating look at Rachel Ruysch's work, and no surprise it has spawned a whole variety of great questions. So we're going to dive into them because there are some really great insights here. So first, do you have any examples where Ruysch took some artistic liberties in how she represented a flower or an insect? They seem to be so intricate in design and so true to life. Did she ever take artistic liberty, or was it always pretty accurate?
That's a wonderful question. And I should actually say that the individual flowers are very accurate, and Professor Davis, says that she's very fussy to get all the details right. But of course, the combination of the flowers and the habitat is a fiction, right? You wouldn't have certain combinations of a lizard and a butterfly that, live in different habitats, and even the flowers would bloom in the same season. So even though each individual flower is so accurately represented that biologists can still identify them, the scene or the whole scenario is not
is more
accurate.
the liberty, right? Yeah.
And there's another interesting the carrion flower. If we go back here, she shows it with it's that flower that has a really strong smell, and she shows it with a butterfly. So you see here in the lower left corner, it's visited by a swallowtail, but in real life, it has this stench of rotten meat, and it's actually visited by flies. And so Charles Davis was, we were discussing this. Was she aware of this? Is this sort of visual joke, or was it a mistake? And we don't exactly know the answer. But so it's really the combinations where she has artistic license, but everything else is really
quite accurate. Terrific. Well, I'm actually, this leads into the next question well, because you happen to have the slide up with the map. We have somebody asking, did she travel outside of Europe? Did she visit? Is there really any evidence that she ventured really beyond the Netherlands to these different trade areas or where some of these species were?
That's a great question. She did not. She stayed within Europe. She was born in The Hague, and when she becomes court painter to Johan Wilhelm, she visits Düsseldorf a couple of times, but she stays in Amsterdam. So she sort of had this, stay at work that deal. But unlike Maria Sibylla Merian, who was also a botanical artist in Amsterdam, who actually went to Suriname, and we have some works by her in the show. Ruysch did not travel down there. I should say that she was related to Frans Bost, who went to Brazil in the 1630s. And I think there's some connections to Frans Bost as well. So she really absorbed all these things in Amsterdam because so much was coming back on ships. And so she had the world sort of.
Great. She had the benefit of her father there too, with all of his specimens, right?
Well,
She,
that's true. That's true. But
yeah,
one of the things we're trying to do with the show is that the father always gets the credit, right? And it's like,
right.
well, of course, dad taught her everything. And then, it's like, he was the director of the Hortus Botanicus, but I think she had her own network as
Yep.
well. And so, even though he's important, we also want to give credit to her relationships with Tommelin and Locke and all these other prophets.
Very true. Okay, let's see. Do you have a sense of how many paintings she painted throughout her life and an idea of what percentage of those paintings are represented in the show?
Not a great question. She was
Yep.
actually very prolific. And I should say, Marianne Berardi, is a great scholar of Ruysch, who's been working on the catalog resume, which is basically you catalog every work in her oeuvre, and then also things that maybe being attributed to her. So, and she estimates that there's about 130. We have 35 in the show, so you could do quick math.
Yep.
A number from each stage of her career. She did, of course, repeat herself. She worked for a market and she put, there was a high demand. So 35, I think, is a good number.
That's great. Sort of taking off from that question is another great question. I think it's a little bit more about the curatorial process. How do you know what private collectors and museums to contact for the loans? And were there any resources that were especially helpful in finding her works and pulling together the show?
That's also a great question. So it's not like if you have the catalog resume, you can, a lot of that work is done already, right? You can,
Yep.
receive slide, the halls. And in this case, some of the works like the Nelson Atkins Museum, you can go to the website and you can Google Ruysch and that comes up. But other ones were in private collections. And we had ways to contact owners. But there were also works like the one on the cover of the catalog was in Cherbourg. And my colleague Bernd Ebert found it in some German database. And
Huh.
if you go to their website, you could not find it on, this is a smaller museum in France. They had this beautiful painting. And so we went to see it. We put another frame on it. And then it made it to the cover. But that was one of the paintings that you Googled it, you can find it. So yeah, there was a lot of combined also contact with Marianne Berardi on where to find these paintings. I should say there's about only 10 in public collections in the US. So about half of the paintings are from museums, and the other half, maybe 40% are from
Private collections. Wonderful. A question about her keeping her maiden name. Was it unusual at the time for women to keep their maiden names, and why might Rachel have chosen to do that?
That's a great question. Yes. Actually, I'm not, so Judith Leister, I don't actually know if she changed her name to Molenaar when she married another painter, so she's another woman artist. I don't know, I think it was more typical that you would take your husband's name.
Mhm.
And in the documents, she's sometimes referred to as Mrs. Paul, right?
Right.
And you see that even in the biography, her husband's name is mentioned. Uh, but you know, it's sort of a branding thing. I mean, Frederick Ruysch really was very big. So he had that museum and people would visit, and you know, Peter the Great and even Johann Willem and the Medici. And I think she she sort of used her family name, I think, as a way to sort of brand herself. And
Yeah. There's like a little fame attached, right?
yes,
To
exactly,
yes. Yeah.
exactly.
Yep. That makes perfect sense. Um, had a couple of other questions. Uh, Her paintings are so detailed. Did she ever illustrate anything that wasn't purely artistic pleasure? Like, did she do scientific drawings at all for any kind of publication that was not a painting, but was more of a reference material?
So not a lot. There are not a lot of drawings by her, and there are, of course, like Maria Sibylla Merian or you know, Johanna Herold. They did these sort of botanical illustrations that I showed you earlier. But she did depict a toad, the Suriname toad, which was you know, it's this animal with these holes on its back, and it hatches. You know, it's like, can't explain the whole thing, but anyway,
Yeah.
the Suriname toad was this phenomenon that her father owned one and Whitson owned one, and she's one of the first artists to depict one in a painting. And she
Mm.
based that in the unique discovery of Robert Schindler. There's a drawing of that same toad, which was in one of the venues. And that seems to be more like a scientific illustration. And even the painting is not the sort of beautiful, sort of a one-off. And maybe it was commissioned by one of the owners of this unusual creature, and we have a specimen of it in the show as well.
I was going to say that's the large toad, right? That we,
Yes, the
yeah, that
large
you can
toad.
see.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Excellent. Um, Another question about influence. Did she influence other Dutch female artists either during or after her death? Did she inspire anybody else that we may know?
Yeah, well, obviously her
Her
sister Anna
sister, yeah.
Ruysch, and you know, that's not as well researched. I think there are many in the 18th century. You know, of course, there's Jan van Huysen, who sort of comes on the scene sort of in the 1700s, that she sort of had a competitive, you know, sort of back and forth with. But I haven't actually researched it, and I think that there's definitely are, but you know, this was, you know, her oeuvre. There's really still a lot to do on Ruysch, so that's a great
Yeah.
question, and I think you could uh find people, but there's, you know, she didn't really have pupils other than her sister,
Hmm.
but certainly there are, you know, not super well-known names, but there's certainly people who were inspired from that. And
Who were?
Johann von
Yeah.
Huysen took a thing or two from stuff.
Great. Perhaps we have time for one last question, and I will ask this one. So, because some of the flowers that she was painting bloomed at different times, did she paint each flower separately? Did she arrange them even though they bloomed at different times? How did she sort of put together the composition, knowing that these flowers had different seasons, is the question.
Yeah, no, they reeled very, of course, very quickly. And so she would sort of assemble things.
Hmm.
You know, like you saw in her portrait, she had a botanical drawing in front of her, so she clearly used botanical drawings. Um,
Yep.
we don't know a whole lot about what her studio would look like. Van Gogh said, oh, she had birds' nests lying around, and he just describes it sort of, but he doesn't give us a whole, description of her method. Interestingly, her father had a method of preserving flowers by injecting them with a sort of type of wax that also maintained
Huh.
their color for longer. So some people have speculated, well, maybe she had wax flowers that she sort of arranged, or real flowers that were sort of preserved its life for a bit longer. But
Yeah.
I don't have a perfect answer for that. So because unlike Jan van Huysen, who actually made drawings of the territory forms, we don't have any by her.
Right.
But the idea is that drawings be the aided for works
As
by other
reference.
artists. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Antien, for taking us through this beautiful exhibition and a little bit more about Rachel Ruysch's life and work. I want to encourage everybody who joined us tonight, if you haven't seen these paintings in person and really immersed yourself in the Rachel Ruysch's world, I encourage you to do that before the exhibition closes on December 7th. So still plenty of time to see it, but you don't want to miss experiencing the detail of these flowers and really seeing the natural history elements as well that are incorporated throughout the exhibition. It is really, really special. So thank you again, Antien, for taking the time to talk to our members tonight. And thank you, everyone who joined us for taking part in tonight's program. We look forward to seeing you back at the MFA very, very soon. And have a wonderful night.